Good afternoon and welcome to the seminar, which we're organizing with the support of the European Commission. Today we are going to be looking into the implementation of the Energy Performance of Building Directive. And through the course of this afternoon, we will be looking at best case examples of how to go about producing buildings that are of high energy efficiency. The Architects Council of Europe has been a strong advocate for this directive, and I would like to thank the staff and Judith for helping lobby our position with the Commission, and it's also a great pleasure that we have representatives of the Commission here as well to also talk about their perspectives and their insights on the matter. I'd like to also introduce Judith, and perhaps you could take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. And really warm welcome to all of our online attendees, as well as those of you who made it in person. It's wonderful to see you. The occasion is the implementation of the acceptance of the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, but the focus of today's session is EUSEW's work and the Commission's work on highlighting architectural excellence and how we can use these examples of excellence to scale up these pockets of expertise and outcomes into greater implementation and the role they might play in the rollout of the greater environmental and climate ambitions of Europe. So today's session will be structured in 3 parts. We're very fortunate to have Jutta Kastner, who is a policy officer at DG Culture and is coordinating the Creative Europe projects, and she will be introducing her work on the Mies Awards that have been in place, I think, since 2001, which is has a long history of showcasing excellence. And her presentation or discussion will be followed by the award winners' presentation of some of their projects, and we'll then have a short debate together with Sven Damman, who is policy officer at DG Klima, who's coordinating the DG's contributions to building policies. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And once we had the debate, we will then proceed to a short Pecha sessions where we'll see presentations from a project that ACE has been coordinating over the years, looking at exemplars from various architectural awards and what we can learn from these projects. So a quick insight into what's going to be part of our forthcoming report on scaling up excellence in the built environment. So without further ado, a very warm welcome to you, Jutta. Come and take your place.
So yeah, thank you very much, dear Andre Pizzuto, dear Judith Campion, dear friends of contemporary architecture. It is a pleasure to be here today representing the European Commission, like you said already. My name is Jutta Kastner and I'm Policy Officer in the Directorate General for Education, Youth, Sports and Culture. I would wish we had a general directorate all by ourselves for culture, but it is not the case. So I'm in charge of the European Prize for Contemporary Architecture, the Mies van der Rohe Awards. I am also pleased to welcome you here on site and above all online, because I hear there are many, many participants out there who are following our discussions. Here in CIVA, the hub for architecture, landscape, urban planning and ecosystems. So CIVA is a great place to discuss about architectural awards and prizes as a source of inspiration, because this is what you are looking for in today's workshop. and to engage in a dialogue about the profound impact of architecture. So one of these architecture awards is the EU Mies Awards, the European Prize for Contemporary Architecture. And the Commission has launched this award back in 2001 in cooperation with the Mies van der Rohe Foundation in Barcelona, with whom we have enjoyed a long-standing partnership and cooperation since then. The EU Mies Awards, as you said, are supported by Creative Europe, our flagship program to support the culture and creative sectors in Europe and beyond. The program celebrates its 10th anniversary this year, so marking a decade of fostering culture and creativity across Europe, including the architectural sector. The EU Mies Awards include 3 categories: architecture and emerging, every even year. So this year we celebrate the Architecture and Emerging Award, and the Young Talent, which we celebrate every uneven year, which is focused on gradual projects. The EU Mies Awards detects and highlights outstanding examples of architectural quality and creativity in works that, in the case of the Architecture and Emerging, have been completed in Europe within the last 2 years period before awarding the prize. So they are really reflecting the developments that are happening in the architecture sector. It also tracks previous award projects and opens debates on what we build and why we build and how we build. By doing so, the prize becomes a platform for investigation, development, and implementation of sustainable architectural practices that minimize the negative environmental impact of construction, as well as promote the social, cultural, and economic benefits of sustainable growth. The prize strengthens the fact that contemporary architecture is socially and culturally rooted in European cities, towns, villages, and landscapes, and as important to people's everyday lives. With the prize, we build and help raise awareness on the benefits quality architecture can generate for sustainable growth and social cohesion, in accordance with the objectives of the European Green Deal, which sets no net emissions of greenhouse gases by 2050, economic growth decoupled from resource use, and no person and no place left behind. Thanks to the amazing group of nominators, hundreds of works to be considered for the prize are brought to the attention of everyone who cares about what is built around us. The EU Mies Awards also counts with the Architects' Council of Europe and the European Association for Architectural Education as key institutional partners. So special thanks is also due to all the members of the jury over the years for their thorough considerations and deliberations to bring to the award the most outstanding works in contemporary architecture across Europe and beyond. In reflecting on the 2024 jury deliberation, it becomes clear that their task was far from easy. Through their selection, the jury recognizes a variety of vital themes: the need to question conventional norms in architecture, pedagogy, and education, the urgent need to preserve our natural landscapes and to slow down urban sprawl and pressure, the duty to protect and revitalize Europe's rich cultural heritage. And the video we are going to watch right now on the jury's deliberation reflects greatly these points.
I think there's a real need to improve debate and communication about architecture. In that sense, I really am happy to be part of this process and to be able, I hope so, to contribute to this broader communication.
I personally developed an agenda about social inclusion, contextual viability of the buildings, and innovation and sustainability. So these three pillars combined with the fourth one, that is simply beauty, which we somehow cannot take away when looking at architecture.
Architecture have to have a convincing narrative, otherwise it cannot convince the public that it should be accepted. This is the key. The architect has to find a way to explain his story. And if this is not clear, the architecture is not functioning.
Right now the energy is building up quite nicely. As you can see, we're getting a bit red cheeks, and the voices are getting a bit louder, and yeah, I guess the discussions are a bit more intense. So it's nice.
I think we need to work on a very thin edge. What I see has to have an impact on me, it has to shake me somehow. But at the same time, we want to always be aware of what's happening, how our work is impacting the physical world. So if we're able to keep these two worlds together, maybe we can save a role for the architects in the future.
When I look at the buildings, I have to understand what is behind the facade. So why is it there, for whom, and how can it be used?
L'architecture a voulu être un art, et pour moi, c'est pas un art, l'architecture, c'est le regroupement des arts. Et donc, il faut pouvoir penser effectivement beaucoup plus de choses que simplement l'architecture. Si avec l'architecture, je serais très ennuyé tout le temps. L'architecture seule, c'est pas drôle.
Back to policy. The European architectural policy, established about 20 years ago, is developing an integrated and people-centered approach to a sustainable built environment, where architecture has a major role to play to design buildings, public space, and urban landscapes that contribute to citizens' quality of life. The foundation of this policy rests on two pillars, and why I mention it, because the prize is one of them. On the one hand, that on political documents inviting the Commission and the Member States to promote quality architecture. The impact of these invitations can be seen in the study the Architects' Council of Europe published earlier this year on architecture policies in Europe, in a panorama of the actors, policies, tools, and promoting high-quality architecture and Baukultur as the new political ethos in Europe. And those who are online, I mean, you will find them on your website, and there are some exposed here outside before this room, which is for us a great source of inspiration and reference. And on the other hand side, the EU Prize for Contemporary Architecture, Mies van der Rohe Award, which plays a key role in highlighting outstanding works of architecture and best practices in Europe. This was also underpinned by the work of member states experts we called in 2021 to advise on long-term strategies for a shared culture of architecture and the ways high-quality architecture can help to improve and create the spaces and places of Europe for the benefit of everyone. I wholeheartedly refer everyone involved in building and planning to the report Towards a Shared Culture of Architecture, Investing in a High-Quality Living Environment for Everyone, this group of experts published at the end of their mandate. So seeing the results of the EU Mies Awards, I am convinced that we are in the hands of the right people who are addressing many of the challenges that we have in Europe and worldwide. Before we see a video on the awarded works in 2024, bringing me towards the end of my contribution to this event this afternoon, I want to thank those involved in the creation of healthier, more inclusive and pleasing spaces, resilient to climate change and affordable for their contributions to our shared architectural heritage. Architects can be agents of change. Thank you.
Aquí se entiende que la biblioteca es un palacio del pueblo y para el pueblo.
Emerging Awards sorry, I should have mentioned that. It is about the Gabriel García Márquez Library in Barcelona. Thank you.
Las bibliotecas están amenazadas por Google Books o Amazon y de alguna manera se pone en cuestión cuál es el valor de la arquitectura física en estos contextos digitales en el que se ofrecen tantas prestaciones y posibilidades online.
Es un lugar que entras y te invita a quedarte, te invita a curiosear y ver qué hay aquí, qué hay acá.
Sobre todo que le ha dado una vida al barrio que no tenía.
La biblioteca tiene un componente estructural muy importante y muy visible porque la propia estructura de madera se deja vista en todos sus espacios, incluso llegando a formarse como elemento de mobiliario. Todo está relacionado y diseñado bajo estos parámetros como de diseño ecosistémico que llamamos, que conforma los espacios interiores, ¿no?
And the second video we are going to see is about the winner of the Architect Award, who we also have one of the architects later on here in the event. It is about the study pavilion, or is for the study pavilion on the campus of the Technical University of Braunschweig by Gustav Düsing and Max Hacke, Berlin.
I think the very shortest thing I can say about the building is that it's open in all means. It's open in its way to be used, it's open in a way it looks from the outside, and on the inside possibilities are open. It's meant to be a space where you can randomly bump into each other. So it's a bit of a counter model to, let's say, the digital sphere, where you don't accidentally meet people.
It's full of life and people using this building inside and out. I see a really lovely mixture of interactions that we don't have at this university so far.
We wanted to create a building that really celebrates student culture. You can look at this building as a new kind of campus typology that puts the social and informal learning activities first and provides an alternative model to, let's say, a lecture hall.
Congratulations again to these winners, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jutta. That was a great summary and really insightful about how much you're doing at the Commission to support the creative industries, and we really appreciate that. So we threw the gauntlet down to the architects, the award winners, to come and talk to us about what empowered them, or what were the key enablers for them to realize these projects, and what do they think the barriers might be to scale up the creation of such exemplars. So we're very lucky to have Max Hacke, Sophie Moret, and José Toral presenting their project. So Max Hacke is an architect based in Berlin, where he founded Bureau Hacke in 2016. His work covers a broad spectrum, from educational and residential buildings to research and teaching. His focus is on architecture shaping new social and collective dynamics, understanding architecture as a process rather than an object. Together with Gustav Düsing, Max was awarded the German Architecture Prize in 2023, the DAM Prize in 2024, and the Mies Award this year for the building that you've just seen, the TU Braunschweig Study Pavilion, which he's going to present to us today. Max, over to you.
I hope you can all see me and hear me okay. I will share my presentation with you now, and I hope this is visible for everyone. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to speak here. I will give a short presentation on the study pavilion at the TU Braunschweig and give a little bit of insights in how this project came to be. And as you can see, I've titled the presentation Learning Architecture, and that is for two reasons. One is that you can look at this building as a new type of learning facility, a project with a strong social and collective agenda, which is enabled through learning. And the other thing is that the project is quite unique in the way it came to be. The development processes behind it are something that we can maybe all learn from, in the hope that more such ways of making architecture will come. It is also our first building that we have realized. We've learned a lot on this project, and we can only recommend the kind of engagement our client, the university, has brought into this project. As it was already presented in the video, the study pavilion is a new type of campus facility. It offers an alternative to the, let's say, the lecture hall, which is gives a mono-directional form of teaching and learning. And quite opposite to that, as well as facilities like a library, this project offers a space of informal and social learning. So where learning happens through conversation, through socializing, through partying, having coffees, etc. And if there's one attribute, an architectural attribute of this building, is that it's open. It is open in the way it looks, the way it's transparent, and the transparency shows the activity inside and is projected out into the streetscape. It is open in the way it's accessible for everyone. It's really a public project. It's open not just for the students, but to the general public. There's no control at the door. There's no security. So it is as much a social infrastructure for the students as well as it is for the neighborhood. And that's how we like to think about this project. And it's also very flexible and full of possibilities inside. And as I said, it's not a lecture hall. It's neither a library. It's where students learn individually as much as collectively. And to quote maybe one of my professors when I was a student, he said to me, 50% is what you learn is from us, and 50% is what happens between you guys. And this is an idea that very much resonates in this building. So how did it all start? It started with a competition in 2016 or 2015 rather. That was one competition that was happening inside the university. It was for the teaching assistants of the Faculty of Architecture. And instead of making a big open competition, the university or the Faculty of Architecture decided we have enough talent and resource in-house. So why don't we use that and give our own teaching staff a chance to realize a project like this? And because we were both, Gustav and I, teaching at this university at different times, we were able to collaborate in this competition. And here you can see the campus. This is the central campus of the TU Braunschweig. There's a mixture of classical old buildings as well as post-war additions. You see a grand lecture hall. There's a central library and various institutes. The tower that you see in the middle is the architecture faculty, and which at the moment really doesn't provide any spaces for people to connect socially. It's quite a efficient building, but there's nothing to connect people. So when working on these competitions, we were inspired by something at the university which is called the drawing rooms. They are existing spaces at the campus. They go back a long time, and they're essentially self-organized spaces by the students that really celebrate student culture. There's lots of parties, lots of social events, so they're not just a desk where you learn and where you work, but they're much more than that. So we thought all this really needs is a new framework, a new spatial framework. The culture is already there, and it really needs just a new infrastructure. So we designed this building as one big open room, a democratic space for everyone. It is accessible from all different sides, has different levels, many stairs to articulate the idea of accessibility and visual connections inside the space. And we also gave the building a covered outdoor space to extend the building into the surrounding nature and provide outdoor workspace. So we've always looked at this building as essentially the living room of the campus. It is, on the one hand, the first building you see when you come to campus, but is also one that you can literally walk through on your way to somewhere else. So it has this social idea also on an urban scale. Here's some references that inspired us when designing this building. Cedric Price, the Fund Plans, and Jonas Friedman, La Ville Spatiale, both examples of a mobile architecture, an architecture that is highly flexible and can change tectonically on various scales. And that's something we translated into this idea of a superstructure, which is essentially just a 3 by 3 meter structural grid. And that is provides beyond the structure of the building, also the technical infrastructure of the building. So you can plug yourself with your laptop into a column, for example. And it can thereby change on a daily time scale very rapidly. It can change on a more like a yearly scale, but in the way that it can be densified if the requirements would ever change on campus for more space, and it is completely demountable also. It can be taken apart back into its original pieces, transported somewhere else, and put back together in a different form, possibly also for a different use. While designing this, what was very important for us to keep a level of simplicity in the construction. So it is a steel wood hybrid construction that is essentially based on only one module, which is a 10 by 10 centimeter steel tube that makes all the columns and beams, and inserted are the timber platforms held in place by various staircases that are structurally stiffening this building. And when you keep adding these elements, you create islands, you create bridges, you create a really flexible workspace, but also one that creates an enormous amount of density and spatial complexity while also being very simple. So this was very important for us to have this very simple kit of parts, which relies on very few elements that are repetitive and repeated throughout the buildings. But then when you put them together, create a very complex spatial framework and network. Here you can see some videos of the construction process on a time lapse, where you can see how quickly this whole thing was built because of its modular qualities. This only took something like 3 weeks to put together. That is the entire structure, including the facade and the roof structure. And then here you see the outer colonnade being put up as well. And this, as I said, is a very quick time lapse. A little word about the sustainable or energy efficiency aspect is that the building is a lightweight structure that heavily relies on renewable energies. It is connected to a district heating, and in Braunschweig, the district heating is one of the most sustainable ones in Germany, relies on more than 80% of renewable energies. The building also has a geothermal cooling system. Both heating and cooling work via the underfloor heating system, and the building is fully naturally ventilated. So there's very little technical infrastructure in this building. There's very little solar heat gain in summer due to the overhang of the roof. But in winter, when the sun is low and you do want the solar heat gain, and there's no leaves on the trees around, you do get it. The building has extremely high acoustic standards. So when you walk in, almost everyone who walks in has this experience of, wow, this is actually better than we thought. And it has obviously an incredible daylight qualities. So there's very little use of artificial daylighting. There is a photovoltaic and a green roof plant. It hasn't been realized yet due to a lack of funding, but the capacity of the building is there and will be hopefully realized soon. This is shortly after completion, when you could fully experience this new campus infrastructure, almost like this X-ray vision, still empty. There's a few moments throughout this building with many of these double heights bridges that are giving students the possibility to experiment, potentially prototype on a large scale. The building opened about 1.5 years ago. At first, students were very timid and weren't really sure what type of building this is and how to act in this building. And slowly they're coming to understand that it's really their building, a building for them to inhabit and to control. And this is some footage from last summer where you can see how this is really becoming more and more a buzzing space where people carry out the furniture into the outdoor space and work there. A lot of group work, a lot of workshop is happening, a lot of communication and exchange. And as I say this, I'm coming to the end of my presentation. There's actually two more slides. There's a little word about the exterior space, which is a space that is obviously used in seasonal change when there's spring and summer. That allows for an additional expansion of the building. And yes, now I'm at the end of the presentation, as we can watch this flyby video of the end of the day in an autumn day in this building at TU Braunschweig. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Max. What an amazing insight into the process and how you have thought about using resources to achieve high quality of life and environment. I think you mentioned before the new social and collective dynamics, and I think we can really see how these many priorities and drivers come together in this building, and I'm absolutely not surprised that it was picked as the award winner this year. I hope you can stay on to field some questions in about 20 minutes once we have had Sophie's and Jose's introduction or presentation as well. Thank you. And so next presenter is Sophie Mouret. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And you're working in the Luxembourg government in public building administration. Sophie is the architect for the winning project of the 2024 NEB Prize for the transformation of the Lycée Michel Lucius. Over to you, Sophie. Thank you for joining us. Her microphone. Your microphone is muted, Sophie. No.
Yep.
Yep, you're here. Thank you.
I'm
Great.
sorry.
Please, you're on.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I was saying I will walk you through the presentation because it's through the project because it's more a process than like a new building. And first, I will tell you a little bit about the surroundings. Okay, we're working in this high school, and it's called Lycée Michel Lucius, as you already heard, and this is the whole site. But on this side, we have the school, which is here. We have buildings from the university, which are here. Then we have housing for applications for international protection. We have heritage buildings, which are at the moment unused. And we have a little sports facility, which is already quite run down, but still used. And the whole thing is set up in this park of this other heritage building, which is a former seminaire, which has been a school in early 1900s, I think. Well, actually, and the whole thing is set in like housing part. Here's another school, but mostly there are houses around, and so there are lots of neighbors who also use the park here as their
we can't see your presentation. I mean, we can see the presentation, but it's not advancing. Are you clicking through slides or?
No, I'm still on the same slide.
Oh, great. Okay, no problem.
So, well, and then we're concentrating on a few parts of the school, which is first the 3000, the block 3000. They are called wings. and it's a structure from the 1970s. Then we have a second part, which is the 6000. They're called Wing 6000, so in the school. And that's a temporary building out of the 1990s. And we have the central schoolyard, which should be a schoolyard, but it's more used as, you can see it on the picture, as an extended parking lot. Well, just to start briefly with what we are starting off, it's the 3000, which was a very efficient engineered structure built in the 1970s to really quickly get more school space. It was a very efficient building, built very quickly in a few months' time. But it's also very reduced in material. Here you can see from outside, and it had to be abandoned. I don't know, because the
pictures. Sophie, we can't see any of the pictures. I'm not sure if you're showing pictures.
Yes,
we cannot see the pictures on the screen for some reason. You might be.
Okay.
I wonder if you're sharing another screen.
What are you seeing?
We're seeing the économie circulaire dans la construction, the round slide, and the
yes,
so
and
your starting slide. Oh,
I'm
now,
sorry.
if you click forward.
So I make a new share. Okay, can you see it now? Second slide.
Wait. I think we might be seeing half the slide for some reason.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm sharing my whole screen. I can try to do it again. New share. So I tried to share my entire screen. Maybe that works. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Okay, sorry. So again, we have the building of the 70s, we have the temporary building of the 90s, and we have the central courtyard, which has been used 2018 until our project, which was 2019, until as a parking lot, which was a little not what was intended at the beginning. Then we have the efficient building of the 3000, which had to be liberated because it could not longer be refurbished or used. So the structure was not strong enough to support what we would need to make to adapt it for use at the moment. Here you can see we have a steel structure and the flooring, which was quite minimal. You can see the corrugated steel, and there was not much above. The 6000 was similar, but it was a wooden structure, and it was a temporary building, which was still there in 2019. There were only classrooms in this building, and we didn't have lots of plans, so we had to make openings to see how the walls were constructed. That was actually where we started. We had the building 3000, which we could no longer use, with a library inside, and we had the 6000, which the school didn't want to use anymore. What we thought it was fit to be refurbished and to house the library. Then we had a few different topics we treated, and it wasn't this linear project. It was more something came and then something else and then something else came again. And so at the end it became a whole project, but it never started out as this project. So we worked on the public tender process, working out how to give away furniture that we were no longer using, but the state is not allowed to give away something. So we had to develop a system how to make a contract with someone so basically they could get this furniture, and we set this up. Then we developed a system how to rate the procurement so that we could select other criteria than the price. That's an outcome of the project. Then we were salvaging all the material we could, which was the aim of the project, because it was a pilot project. So we said, okay, we will see what we can get out of this building and see what we will do with it later. So you can see we had the steel, obviously, we had the window frames, but we also have the floor boards, the corrugated steel. Then we have the ceiling panels, and we have some bricks. For the 6,000, we said, okay, if we demolish the whole building and we will construct a new building, which didn't need to be as big as the first one because the library was smaller as the volume that was existent. We will need a lot of new material to build that. And then we made life cycle analysis, which showed that we only needed a fraction of that we would cause a fraction of the environmental costs with refurbishing the building, even if this was saying that it was major transformations. Then we did a small pilot project on concrete recycling. We worked together with policymakers to see how much recycled material we could use inside the concrete, which is still running. So they are evaluating how the concrete is behaving in the exterior. And I know that there are already big, concrete recycling is already big in some countries, but in Luxembourg it's not yet. So that was an important step. Then we said, okay, we want to improve the comfort of the building. And we didn't want to put a lot of new technical equipment in this old building. First, I forgot to say that it's also another temporary use because the whole school campus is going to move away in about 10 years' time. So we looked for a solution that was easy and manual. And we found that the crawl space under the building was very cool in summer. So we could use the air coming through the crawl space and creating new double heights for the library. So we had to cut out 2 classrooms, and basically that's our cooling system, and it works quite beautifully. Students did have their say also. First, you can see the corrugated steel elements of the floors of the other building, which were put into a mural painting by the students. And then they have a new school garden, and also the space that was basically no longer used because it wasn't used by the library can now be used as a student or a youth meeting rooms. Then we also built with the reclaimed material. Here you can see the steel columns and beams we deconstructed from the old building. And we put up a new pergola, which we completed with new sails, so that we have a totally new quality on this campus. You can also see that, the basement was kept for a part, so that we now have a new storage facilities for the school and also a new roof terrace. Sorry. Another example for the reuse with the reclaimed material were the facade elements, which we used to build a new railing. We didn't have enough green sorry, green elements, so we completed some of the just gray elements with pictures of the deconstruction. So now you can see on site what was there before and how we did our project. What I said before is there were all different elements and they came nicely together, so that now we have this nice project which looks as if it would have been done by one person with a starting idea, but it wasn't. So it was all small elements that came together over time. And with the idea of building something, to make something sustainable for the school, it all, we were able to direct it in just one focus. Voila. And I'm always saying, you're not doing this project alone. No architectural project is done alone, but especially like a project which is sustainable and reuse project it's impossible to do on your own. So we had a very big team, and we were talking also with lots of policymakers, which was interesting because they were all very eager to help. So we made the experience that everyone, when we came to them and said, okay, we have this problem, everyone tried to help. It wasn't always possible, but we found a lot of solutions like this. So I tried to put this in the different frameworks. I'm not sure that if everything is correct, but here you can see the new European values and principles, how I would rate this, this project. The Bauhaus criteria, here of course we don't have any economical background because it's a school, but we did work on the context and the functionality and also of especially on the place. And I find it as the picture on the lower left, I find it especially nice because you can see on the other building they have the exact same facade panels, where you can see now in our railing that they are the same ones that still exist in the building. So you can see where they're coming from. And finally, the levels indicators. Yes, we have, of course, we worked a lot on efficiency, resource efficient buildings and circular materials. We look to make the most comfortable spaces possible, and also and try to optimize the cost and the value for the students. If you want to know more, here's my contact, or we also did a publication where you can see in depth the project, and but it's in French, so I'm happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophie. It's wonderful to see a project before and after, and to and such effective transformation of the public realm. It's also really interesting to see the LCA process helping to make design decisions, and so we'll hope to touch on that a bit later in the debate. But thank you so much for sharing that example and the process of your thinking. And I hope you can stay on for the questions.
Yes, sure, thank you.
So our last speaker in this section is José Toral, together with Marta Peris. José is leading the architectural practice Peris and Toral Architects. I hope I pronounced that well. The firm focuses on researching new ways of living and building to address the challenges posed by the climate and housing emergency. The practice's work has been recognized by numerous awards, including the Construment Awards 2024 for the sustainable design of the 85 social housing units in Cornellà de Llobregat. José is an associate professor at the Department of Architectural Projects at ETSA UPC, specializing in the study of public space and urban projects. Over to you, José.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'll go on then. Now, I would like to begin with these slides because for just to show how the approach for sustainability we have in the office. So we think everything to be sustainable has to be environmental, economic, and social at the same time. But not all the decisions that we take that are environmental are viable in an economic point of view. Not all the economic decisions are equitable in a social point of view, and not all the social decisions are viable in an environmental point of view. So that means that in order to a project to become sustainable, it has to be viable, equitable, and viable. What does that mean? Is that we cannot focus in each one of these issues, so we should focus in strategies that can go in between. So whenever we want to be environmental and social, we do the strategy of using intermediate spaces like patios, like spaces that help us in the environmental answer, but can become some social common space. Whenever we want to be economic and environmental at the same time, we use a strategy of reducing. Every time you reduce the amount of material, you reduce the amount of layers, you're able to be more environmental and more economic at the same time. And finally, whenever we want to be economic and social at the same time, the strategy is the idea of sharing. So every time we share, we only need to build one unit and the rest of the unit can use it. That's much more economic, but not only this. The nice thing is that we also generate a social space for the community. So in this project in Cornellà, this is Barcelona, this is in the surroundings of Barcelona. Cornellà, it's a worker city. This is social housing in the surroundings of Barcelona. And we had this plot, it was a competition, it was a plot of 25 by 41, the regulations were telling us that we had to fit on this space and also have a patio of 15 by 25. That gives us the sensation that we cannot decide which is the shaping for the city, but then we decided, okay, let's begin the competition, let's begin thinking from the interior. So what we did is like try to change the unit of aggregation. Instead of using the dwelling as the smaller unit, use the room as the smaller unit and making equal rooms. So we fulfill the plot with equal rooms, and because when things are equal, when there is no hierarchy. We think this is something that can answer some of the challenges that we have in the 21st century. Not having when we have equal spaces, that means that there's no bigger room for parents than for sons, and that means that maybe new kinds of family, not only the nuclear family, can fit in these homes, and also by equaling spaces, we also gain some flexibility. That is some flexibility of moving the furniture, because when spaces are equal, they're very easily interchangeable. So the big question was, okay, which has to be the size of a room in order for this to happen? In Spain, our regulations are very small rooms, so we have a single room of 6 square meters, double room of 8 square meters, a main room of 10 square meters. We thought that was not enough in order to be a living room or a dining with a kitchen. So what we did, okay, we had this reference. My partner Marta, she made a PhD about the Japanese house through the cinema of Yasuhiro Ozu, and we knew that there was in Japan, they didn't call the name of the rooms because of the use, as we do in Occident, because they changed the use of the space during the day. So they call them the rooms because of the size. So the 8 tatami room is a tatami, which tatami measures one person lying in the floor. That means 80 centimeters by 1 meter 980. 90 centimeters by 1 meter 80. So it's a 360 by 360 room with 8 tatamis, which measures more or less 13 square meters. We took this as the basis of a matrix. Then we found out that one of the versions of the Grete Lisowski Grid Kitchen of Frankfurt was measuring 360 by 350, or La Petite Cabanon of Le Corbusier was measuring 366 by 366. What means is that we had the most technical room, then the most flexible room, the most technical room, and the room of thinking of Le Corbusier all fitted in the matrix. At this point, we just knew that maybe in the center part we'll have more the bathrooms and the kitchens. Then we begin to put the cores in the corners and placing now the drawings all with them with cross ventilation through the patio. And now we had this situation that maybe this 360 distance between the walls can be good for rethinking the structure with a timber structure. Okay, so one of the first decisions, this idea we're talking about sharing, instead of entering directly to each one of the stairwells, we decided to make a porch to give a door of the building to the city, and then everybody is entering through the courtyard. So it's one of these intermediate spaces that will have this environmental behavior, but will become some social space. So this increases the feeling of belongingness of all the community. They all share the same gate, and they all begin to know each other, and they have these social spaces through here. It's like the PNS Hof. So we have this situation, we have this porch, this is a shadow space, south is coming from here. We have this sun space when the sun hits, this is hot air. Here we have cold air that generates some movement of the air and generates some microclimate in these spaces. So this is the importance of this fence to allow the transparency, to allow the wind to go through, but not looking like it has to be more like a filter. From inside, also the transparency, we have it's one of the stairwells. As we were talking, we go through the porch, we enter through here, and even all the communal space, all of them fit in this matrix of rooms, not even the stairs. So we end up with this floor plan where it is difficult to know which is the difference between the different units and even the communal spaces, no? Because all of them share this equality of rooms, but what we know, we can understand that we have these buffers to relate the interior spaces with the exterior. So we use this intermediate space, and again, for a climatic question, but also some social relations between the neighbors. But just how it works, we have this room where the lift lets you, we have a room for the stairs. This is the only part of the corridor. Some of the units we enter through them through the terrace, and other ones we enter directly. So normally we have these 6 modules, that is 3 bedrooms with 3 day life spaces, that the kitchen with the dining room, the living room, and the washing area. So as I was telling you, this is the communal area. This is one gate, one door that is entering. So would you get through here, through this stair? And here, this is from the interior part, from the inside, one of the terraces. And this idea that when you are in one of these rooms, these 30 square meters, you also are working with this idea of the enfilade, of the wide openings, not only the 80 centimeters typical opening between rooms. So We are using wide openings in order that we can, whenever we open the doors, we can have the feeling that one space joins to the other. Putting the kitchen in the center, showing the domestic work, working about the role, working against the role of gender, showing the domestic work that we need, showing the kitchen, showing the washing areas, and putting them in the middle so they are the core of the house, and it allows us also to do a house with no corridors and put the surface of the corridors into the bedrooms. And this idea of the slicing doors that allow us to join spaces or to separate it whenever we want. This intermediate space, the terrace with the shadow, the solar protection exterior part, generating this intermediate space that can allow us to decrease the temperature 1-2 degrees in the summer. And this idea, this mesh, thus filters the life of the building. We can see how furniture is coming through, and working with the idea of the corners that allow us to put furniture. And this nice thing that even we are working with small spaces of 13 square meters, you're able to see 4 spaces in one point of view because of this idea of working with the porosity of the space. Also, these filters to give some intimacy into the corridors. And then when we go up, we have some shared spaces for the community. These terraces where the community can go and have some social spaces. This is all done with a new way of construction with the timber structure that has been a challenge to solve all the fire, acoustic, and budget problems. But because this is social housing and we did it with a really low budget economy. And this is the construction. This is 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. The stairs are coming in one piece. They were fitted here. Now everything's going around the stairs. 8 weeks, 9 weeks, in 2 months, we were able to rise these 5 stories of housing. And this is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jose. It's really wonderful to see this project. I had to stop myself thinking, I want to see the thermal bridge detail, but I think what's amazing is all these projects have risen to this challenge of social and cultural transformation through huge amount of creativity, and that the result is really a change in body politic. Now, I think what's fascinating to see is how much thought goes into the human interactions and the way people occupy space in creating these innovative ways of building, and that it's no surprise that most of the projects that we have selected for today are mostly public sector projects. I think perhaps there's a commonality in being able to be given the extra time to think through these interactions and design them into a building. And I'm very curious to hear your thoughts from the speakers about how that was made possible, and whether it's replicable and how. And right now, I'd like to invite Sven and Jutta to come to share the podium again. There are 2 microphones there. I think it would be really great if you could, for those of you who are watching online, please feel free to post questions, and Julie is going to relate to us anything that you ask. And my first question does go to the presenters. I don't know if you can put the Zoom screen up again and share yourselves on the cameras. Yeah, thank you. So I wondered if you might want to say a few words about what the enablers were, in particular, what has allowed you to take the extra time or take the time to think through the many factors, including cultural, human, and environmental factors and bring them together to such examples of excellence. Who would like to respond to that? Sophie, ladies first.
I think it's inherent in my job because as part of the public building administration, we're constructing public buildings mostly for a lot of schools. And of course, there's always this part of looking for how the client basically and the students in this for this example will be receiving the work. It is also so that we have external architects, so we're not designing the projects by ourselves, but we're the project leaders. So we need to get everything together and build the projects, which you have seen in my example. And I think basically that's, I think you cannot build when you don't build for the people who will use it. So that should always be the focus, because otherwise the project will never be sustainable, as Jose showed us, because if the people are not adopting the building, then they will never use it, or they will use it very shortly, and then you will have built a lot of nice rubbish. So basically, I think that's always the idea that has to be there, and it's not a wasted time, because at the end it will go quicker. Because if you do this thinking before, then at the end you will be quicker, because there are lots of decisions that already have been taken at the beginning, just by deciding, okay, this is my public, and I will set up this project in this way.
Amazing. Go for it.
No, in my case, okay, we think of the exemplarity of the public funding. So, well, the situation is that if we know that there's public funding to solve the emergency of housing, but this is only solving the problems of a few families. But if we understand that the public money has to be exemplar, that means that we has to be able to take the challenges that we have on the table that allow us how to build with timber, how to do buildings with less amount of demand. So how to improve the way. So this is something that has a feedback for the rest of the society. So in this case, we think we are in a situation of remember the sentence of Buckminster Fuller that you never change things by fighting with the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So this is the situation where we are now. So trying to find which is the new model that will make obsolete whatever we were doing before that is not actually working.
What do you think, Max?
Well, my experience when working in the public sector, which is a relatively limited experience, but there is some, I would say, is time is actually what you have, because there's been so many moments in the course of this project and other projects where a project is on hold, but you, as an architect, you do develop it further in your head. So essentially that you can use that time very well, and that is essentially one of the benefits. I think we've had this time, and we've made good use of it. We've used the energy of the university, like the client as well as the student bodies, to engage with this project and keep making this project come alive, essentially engaging with the community. I think that's one of the maybe special things about the project that we worked on, is that we did have a very clear user in front of us. We knew the people personally almost, and we were almost collaborating with them, talking to them and exchanging, presenting this project regularly. And I think that essentially sharpens the narrative of a project in the end.
That's so interesting. I'm going to bring in Sven because one of the things you have all pointed out is how important it is to have a direct connection with your end users, and all of the projects have been inspired by your vision in terms of what these end users need and what you can do, what shortcuts can you do, but also to drive through the priorities of essentially the new European Bauhaus and the sustainable design principles, which are so apparent in all of these projects. And so I'm going to ask Sven, what is, so for architects it's always critical to have this connection to our end users, but modern procurement systems often don't allow this close connection. But I wondered whether the new Green Deal legislations or the group of legislations that are coming forward and the NEB implementation or the NEB movement's influence on these will perhaps allow more of this close contact. And I know you have a special interest in the difference between aspirations and outcomes. And perhaps you could touch on that as well, how important that is.
Yeah, thank you very much, Judith. And I would like to congratulate the winners of these impressive examples. And it really shows that what we aim to support with the package of EU policies just adopted can be done if there are people who have the vision and have the skills to do it. And there were so many aspects that we also have in our legislation that one could see in these examples. One, for example, we have in the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, as you know, for the first time, quite comprehensive elements of mandatory disclosure of global warming potential of buildings over the entire life cycle. This will be for individual buildings, but member states are also obliged to put forward roadmaps for long-term decarbonization of their building stocks. And it was really impressive to see how, for example, in the Luxembourg example, there were reuse of very carbon-intensive materials, as steel is, on the construction site itself. And in the Spain example, we saw wood use sustainably sourced, I assume. And this is another example that we are addressing in the European Green Deal. We have put forward a regulatory framework for carbon removal certification. So can you get credits for removing carbon long-term for the duration of a building's lifespan from the atmosphere? And we are elaborating currently a new sub-piece, a delegated act on this piece of legislation for long-lasting products. And here great to see that this has been thought into the project already. And let me refer to one example that I saw very predominantly also in the Brunswick construction, adaptation to climate change. You had this very thoughtful shading and avoiding heat overload in summer. Thinking long term also means we have to acknowledge that we are moving into a different climate, and when our children will be grown-ups, they will be living in a different climate. So having cooling solutions, avoiding overload of heating in summer, that's really utterly important. And maybe one last example, also in the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, we also have an element that wasn't mentioned in the examples, but I'm sure it has been thought of, the interlinkage of buildings with sustainable transport. And this in our legislation includes also providing bike parking spaces, but also charging points for electric vehicles. Now you asked about the interaction with the citizens. Obviously, that's a key element in the new European Bauhaus, and in all legislative processes that we have, there's a huge amount of interaction with the stakeholders involved. And I think this also, as you say in your projects, it's the same at legislation that we make. It's a way to get the edge and really get quality legislation passed, and then you also obviously we need the buy-in for these policies.
That's really great, Sven. It's lovely to hear your thought on it. I also wondered, so I think you all mentioned that all of these projects were actually done on a very low budget, and I think it's really important to note that the spending more time on design doesn't make a project more expensive. It just means the integration is done better. And I wondered if you might want to comment on this. And I wondered at the same time if you could comment on whether you're considering any kind of retrospective studies on how the buildings are used. Because when you do such innovative projects, it's really amazing to have the evidence to demonstrate how well your initial design intent has panned out in practice.
Should I go first?
Go for it.
Well, we haven't done any studies to see how it's used, but we have regularly feedback from the school, and they say students love it. I haven't seen it personally in the summer, but I guess they're really using those exterior spaces. The exterior spaces are also used by the neighborhood, by the community that's living around, obviously outside the school hours. So that's a nice thing. And the library is really used a lot, as well as the student, like the youth part, the youth community part. What was the other question? I kind of forgot.
About the cost, but I think you mentioned before that the building didn't cost more than a similar project. And that
No,
the time you spend on design integration doesn't increase the cost.
No, it didn't increase the cost. We calculated the environmental costs, and they were clearly less than another, like if we would have rebuilt something new, which wouldn't have made a lot of sense in this part. So.
Sven?
If I can just add, I think that the European package of legislation that we have adopted will make your work easier in the future, because we have an emission trading system on the energy intensive industries, many of which produce construction products, steel, cement, glass, insulation, mineral insulation wool, and so on. And they have quite a steeply reducing cap of emissions. And if it reduces at this pace, it would hit 0 in 2038. We will adjust it later on to keep the carbon price at an acceptable rate. But that means that there will be a lower carbon content, embodied carbon content in key construction products. On top of that, as you may have heard, the construction products regulation that has been provisionally agreed, that also makes it mandatory to disclose the carbon content of these construction products. So you will be able to see online how much embodied carbon you have in this and this construction product, and then that will hopefully help you to make sound design choices. So I think that it will in the future become easier to also meet these requirements to disclose the life cycle emissions of buildings. And the last point to mention, there's also a new obligation, by the way. In existing buildings, we have loads of super greenhouse gases in the form of ozone depleting substances and as foaming agents in insulation foams. And these actually have to be destroyed when you dismantle a building and have to deal with these insulation foams. And I think that's a reminder in our design today to design in a way that doesn't create problems in the future, as you have done in your projects.
Perhaps when you respond, you might want to just touch on the role of this whole life approach to design, how it's making a difference in your design process, and which bit of the life cycle. I mean, until recently, architects tend to concentrate mostly on the design and sometimes the execution stage, but not so much and not so much post occupancy. If you could maybe elaborate on that as well in your response.
In our case, the life cycle, the construction, the emissions of the constructions were really hard to calculate because there are no common databases and there are different data depending of the industry. So I think that we can work on this, to try to give a common basis that all of us can refer to the same information because it's really very big difference. So every time we have calculated this data, and also not all the materials have an EPD, and this makes it really, really difficult. Okay, so it is the things that in our case, maybe I don't know in the rest of Europe, but doing these kinds of things in Spain is very heroic because it's not easy to get it. Okay, and also calculating in our case the life cycle by the using of the building and going again with this idea of the budget. No, we have to be really clever and have to try to analyze climate. You were asking about the thermal bridges. We have no problem with thermal bridges with timber because in our latitudes this is not generate some condensations and it's good enough for. So we don't have money to do thermal bridges in these situations, no. So we need to be really clever just to put the budget into the places that allow us that in the life cycle we can reduce the demand. And what we are working in Spain in many projects and is try to do projects without a system, not needing heating or cooling. This is the goal where we are, in which we are working in other projects, and also whenever we go back and visit to the people living here, they nearly don't put on the heating. So I think this is a goal that we have to go on. But I think I asked for the Commission to help us to increase the budgets in these kinds of projects because otherwise it's really find a way of finance because otherwise it's only a few of us that we want to go through this way, but it's not easy.
Interesting. Max?
In our case, I would say the main driver of the project or the idea had a social and collective agenda, and that's the thing that we keep observing on the long run in the future. And we go there quite regularly to see the project again, and we keep seeing how it changes, how the students change it, and how their behavior changes inside. And this is a really nice thing to see. Gustav is actually there as we speak now for another event launched by the Mies Award, basically a public tour through the building. And he's probably doing it as we speak. And he's just sent me a photo of students having opened the bar in the building for this event. And this is something we've planned for and anticipated for the whole last year, and we kept fighting for. And that this is now happening with an initiative from the students is one of the most wonderful things to see, and I think is the thing that eventually creates this culture that we talked about so far, and has the students take ownership of the space, have the campus take ownership of their campus, and essentially makes the building also last much longer than maybe other buildings.
That's wonderful to hear, Max. Thank you. And
yep, Jose, because you alluded to the economics of buildings and construction, right? And I hope that EU legislation also helps to create better economics for sustainable construction. And let me give two examples. Like one is, as you know, there's the emission trading system for fossil fuel used in buildings and in transport, which will kick in the coming years. And that will, on the one hand, put a carbon price on very carbon-emitting buildings, but on the other hand, it will also generate revenues for the Social Climate Fund, which is to help vulnerable households to adjust or to make the transition to the low-carbon society. Jutta mentioned it, no one has to be left behind. And a question actually to you. Two of the projects were new construction, And for EU climate policies, obviously the big challenge is renovation. And it would be great if some of the great features of your examples, off-site construction and this really impressive speed of the erection of the buildings, if that would also be applicable to renovation projects in the future.
Yeah, we think the key point is the renovation. The problem we have in Spain is that we have a horizontal property. That means that we don't have tenants of the whole building. That means that in order to do a renovation of a building, we have to put in, they have to agree all the neighbors. And this is a great difficulty. And we also do not have our amount of social housing, it's a 5%. So actually, today I'm in Vienna, and now here they have 60% of public housing. So it's really difficult to do these kinds of. But what we think is that we have an opportunity in the ground floors and also in the upper flat and on the covers and the roofs, because the ground floor is something that it's changing because of the existence of the e-commerce, and our shaping of our cities are changing. So now we have a very great potential of rethinking how we can give these ground floors maybe for some renaturalization, some part of the housing, some part of the common areas, and also adding some atriums, some parts in the coverings in order to generate like this potential. So I think there is a great potential situation of how to do this renewal, but in our country, it's something that it is really difficult because of these difficulties of the ownership.
Thank you so much. And my last question is to Jutta. I wondered if you have seen among policymakers a greater awareness of the importance of cultural aspects in the built environment as a result of the awards, and what the next steps might be for the Mies Awards, and whether you ever might consider a Test of Time award as part of the Mies Awards.
Yeah, thank you. I
Three
mean,
small
the awareness of the cultural aspect in the architecture sector, definitely the European Bauhaus movement has contributed largely to that, because, I mean, we are sitting here, you're representing DG Climate, me, I'm representing DG Education, Culture, Youth and Sports. We would not easily have talked before or spoken with each other before, because everybody would more be in the remit of their priorities. And there definitely, and the new European Bauhaus movement has brought the cultural dimension into the European Green Deal. And of course, the architecture sector is very much impacted by the European Green Deal. How this impacts also the EU Mies Awards, definitely, I mean, the EU Mies Awards is there since 2001. I just said it will celebrate its 25th birthday in 2026. So when Barcelona is the world capital of architecture, so maybe we can explore these opportunities. No, but I mean, definitely our work is very much also focused on making the EU Mies Awards even better known, because when we look at international press, still the Pritzker Prize is very much quoted rather than the EU Mies Awards. And since we are looking also on promoting European values, I mean, within Europe and Creative Europe countries, this is our geographical remit. And beyond, for example, we have the EU Mies Awards exhibition, so the 40 shortlisted projects, whenever we can, also shipped abroad. So it was in Dubai, it might go to Osaka in 2025. So there is also to enhance the visibility of what we do in Europe, and what is the architecture culture we want to foster in Europe. If there is another edition, we have already 2 editions of the prize. If we will have another edition test over time, it is not foreseen for the time being, because as I just said before, we focus on the aspects also like including in the prize a dimension of early awareness raising about what we consider, and we had the conversation about the users. This is part of it. A user, a potential user who is not aware what could be high quality architecture. How can that be? I mean, it is of course a partner for conversation, but to manifest the interest and towards also the architects and those, the clients and those make the projects possible, needs a certain, like you mentioned it also before, skills, awareness raising. So the educational side will also be very important. Also, that was a recommendation from the member state experts I just mentioned before. So this will be the focus, I mean, yeah, and hence the dimension of the price.
Thank you, Jutta. And just taking on your point on, as you know, the ACE has been working or creating a peer learning group around awards. And in the second and final part of this event, we're going to showcase a few of the examples that have emerged through the national awards. And so we are getting together regularly with this group of experts from our member organizations, discussing how the principles of NEB and levels can be embedded in the recognition of excellence. And to that, I'm inviting Hugo to come up on the platform. So we're going to have 5 speakers in a Pachacucha format. Thank you so much.
Thank you, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks indeed.
Yes, of course. There's a spare one here.
Sorry.
Oh, there are questions on the board.
Yeah, there are 4 questions. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Elena, you first.
I'd like to ask Jose, in his project, where we saw the escalators, but I didn't see the elevators. They are in the same core or in the same area. And the other question is to Max. We would like a little bit to explain the sustainability of his project, because it's an open space with full of window frames, and we didn't see any mechanical engineering or things like that. So I would like to explain the sustainability of the project. Thank you.
I answer really fast. There is a lift in each one of there is a room where the lift led you. And for us, the universal accessibility is important in all of the drawings. So even they are adapted for visitors, all of them, and 10% are totally adapted. So this issue is totally solved in the
So
project.
it's not in the same area where escalators are, right?
The escalator is
It's in the
a room.
four corridors.
Okay, the escalator has an outside ventilation, so it's a room only for the escalator. And then you have the corridors, but then you have a room where you enter to 3 dwellings. In this room, there is the lift, you let the entrance.
Yes.
Apologies, I missed on the questions from the audience. So someone commented, very inspiring projects to create zero emission buildings. The net heat requirements must certainly remain below 15 kilowatt hours per meter square per annum. Is that also true for these projects? If you could answer briefly.
Yeah, we are below this 15 kilo. We are around 6. But it's because in Spain it's easier.
Sorry, I missed the question.
If the heating requirement is below 15 kilowatt hours per meter square per year, which is the passive house limit.
I mean, ours is not a passive house, no. So.
But you also have district heating.
Yes. I mean, I don't know if I can comment now on the exact data of it. I can explain the principles behind it. it was just mentioned in terms of the sustainability of the ventilation system. We tried to keep the technical equipment at a minimum and do everything via passive ventilation, and have an additional natural ventilation, which is essentially automized. So the building measures the levels of oxygen, and when there's a need for fresh air, then windows automatically open for a brief moment to create a natural airflow into the building.
Thank you. I hope that satisfies the question, Carl-Peter. And someone else had a question about the project in Luxembourg. What was the attitude towards the needs to adapt the design during construction processes? Does reuse require a certain amount of adaptability?
Yes, of course, but not in the function, because we didn't create the function that was set. So for the user, the function is still the same they asked for, but of course in the aesthetics and what the project looked like and what were the materials that were available, because we tried to use them a lot or most of it coming from our own deconstruction. So yes, you need a lot of flexibility, because you don't need, if you're using reclaimed material, you don't know exactly when you start the planning process what material will be available at what moment, but not on the function.
Thanks, Sophie. A really excellent question from Rod Bond regarding the how much time you all spend on defining the project grid or working with an existing grid. And the question is, do you envisage any universal grids that might transcend different building uses to maximize LCA and foster buildings that are more adaptable to certain future uses?
I think it will be impossible to find a universal grid, but what is sure is that when we increase the amount of supports, we decrease the spans, and that makes the emissions of the building are lower, because when really it's really hard is the amount of concrete, the amount of doing the slabs is where we have more emissions. So when we add more supports, but it's not always, it always has this limit with the flexibility. But I think the 2 or 3 examples we have today are good on that.
Thank you. Max, did you want to add to that?
Sorry, the question was about the grids?
The universal grid to maximize
yeah.
LCA benefits.
I think there's a limit to where our grid how it can function and where it could function and what function it could take on. I think it has quite a lot of possibilities, but clearly there's a limit to it. I mean, we've experienced the limit within the building. There's one column missing. I don't know if anyone has studied the project in detail, but when we came to the point of having a seminar room where larger groups for presentation formats can gather, then you need larger spans. So those, I suppose, are the limits of it.
Great. Sven and Jutta, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, it was very encouraging to see these examples. Maybe in the future we need to also discuss what has not been addressed yet, that is sort of management of construction sites, because there's a lot of pollution happening during the construction as the construction goes on, and also exposure of the workforce to unhealthy products and so on. So maybe that's something for a next event. But I think the policy framework is there, the skills are there, the examples are there. So let's make the renovation wave a reality and the green construction. Thank you.
And Jutta?
No, everything's fine. Thank you very much. No, I just wanted to probably underline that the project that was just presented also from Cornelia was one of the finalists in the last edition of the prize. So I'm happy to see this project also discussed today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we're so excited to see the awards playing such a big role in the public consciousness of what we can achieve. with the really strict constraints that we are beginning to be able to work with. And thank you for the inspiration from all the panel members and presenters. And so we're going to go on to the second part of the presentations, the pechakuchas, while everyone's preparing, including Hugo, who will be the first presenter. Just to say that we just wanted to give you a very quick showcase of the outstanding projects put forward by our member organizations and that have received awards. And we are studying what we have learned from these projects in terms of what policies we need to promote as the Architects Council of Europe, and how we can evidence those policies, how we can illustrate those policy initiatives, and also what we can give back to our member organizations in terms of next steps for awards criteria. And at this point, I'm going to also pass the word on to Andre, who's going to coordinate this next section of the event. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Judith. So the next stage of this seminar will involve a short snapshot of national projects that have won awards. We'll have a number of speakers to give this presentation, and we'll start off with Hugo Plagnot, who is a French architect living and working in Finland. He is the SAFA's delegate to the ACE Working Group, Environment and Sustainability and Sustainable Architecture.
Thank you very much. Hello everyone, yes, so my name is Hugo Plagnol. Despite my French accent, I'm here to represent the Finnish Association for Architecture, and I will present you a daycare center done by the architect office AFKOS, who got the Finlandia Prize last year, which is the highest prize for architecture. So the project was initiated by the city of Tuusula to build a new kindergarten in order to attract young families. It replaced the old one, which had air quality problem. Being a northern country, Finland had been one of the first to insulate its building, and therefore had a regular case of mold, making building unfit over time. The site is, as often in Finland, a forest along the road. The building was placed rationally in order to cut the noise down and open its terrace towards the south. There have been a special care over the site's biodiversity by keeping some of the forest, planting trees and various shrub species, and replacing the usual grass area by a meadow. The building itself is quite... Yes, now you can see the video. It's my son in the kindergarten. This is quite typical for Finnish kindergarten, that the kids can play outside despite the weather condition, whether it's raining or snowing or muddy. And you have a quite typical vestibule system here, that the kids enter here. This is covered area. Then they can enter in this place, which is called a mud room, where they get their clothes off. The waterproof overall are dried in the drying cabinet here, and they arrive in the dressing room area where they can put warmer clothes and take their shoes off and wear slippers. Then they enter the playing areas, which are connected to the nap room. So this is the dressing room. The 200 to 240 kids are divided into groups that are sharing the same sport facilities and canteen. So now the construction choices. After the problem of the previous kindergarten, the city tender insisted on having a healthy construction, and the architect went for solid 240 mm thick CLT wall without insulant. It is untreated also. The general rule in Finland is to have outside wall with a U value under 0.17 watt per square meter. And there's a specific rule for wood allowing it to be under 0.4 watt per square meter. By having a better performing roof, Here, and better performing ground floor, they managed to get an operational energy under the 90 kilowatt per square meter per year, so it's much higher than the Spanish project we had before. Now we can see the life cycle assessment. What we can notice right away is that the operational energy and the material embodied energy are both accounting for more than 40% of the global emission of the life cycle. On the right part, yes, the footprint is 15.5 kilograms of CO2 per square meter per year, which is about the limit that Helsinki has put in place for new housing since last June. On the right side, you can see the handprint, which is even bigger than the handprint due to the amount of biogenic carbon store and the recycling of future part of the building. So here are the emissions per material. Without surprise, concrete and metals and mechanical equipment are the highest. And now you have what is the most interesting part, is the embodied energy per building part. So the three biggest polluters are the building piles, the ground floor, and the building pads, meaning everything that is under the foot area. And the building above is mostly in wood and has a quite excellent embodied energy. So, what does this life cycle tell us? That the early design choice had the biggest impact. The simple, rational, and healthy construction system could be balanced by having an excellent traditional cold roof, and that the huge foundation work, accounting for 37% of the global carbon emission, depending largely on the city planning, was unavoidable. How could we improve it? A different location, of course, and premium materials such as zero carbon or recycled steel, concrete, asphalt, gravel, wooden frame for the windows and the inner walls, cellulose or glass wool instead of mineral wool together would have lowered the life cycle by an additional 12%. Overall, this is a showcase of an excellent public design carried out by a dedicated team of architects and specialists. Thank you very much for your attention. Any question or next speaker?
Thank you, Go, for that. I must add that these sessions, these short presentations are meant to last exactly 5 minutes, and you are bang on time. So our next speaker is Geroid Carville from the Royal Institute of Architects of Ireland. Geroid is an Irish architect currently working on climate change as an advisor to the RIAI, and the RIAI is delegate to the ACE Working Group on the Environment and Sustainable Architecture.
I'd like to say warm thanks to the Architects Council of Europe for inviting me to speak today. I'm going to give a brief introduction to two projects which are shortlisted for this year's awards. Before I do, I'd like to give some context to the RIA's evolving approach to celebrating architecture as well as championing sustainable design, and to assist our members to adapt to the challenges ahead and the future challenges in legislation such as the Epbd. So we published the RII Challenge in 2021 and followed this up with client user guides last October to inspire members to deliver metrics beyond building regulations in operational energy, embodied carbon, water and internal environmental quality. And we're currently working with the Irish Green Building Council to prepare tools to help all building industry stakeholders to work together to achieve these elevated targets. We've reformatted the Irish Architectural Magazine so that every project presented is done with a list of building and in-use metrics. And we've also updated the criteria for our annual awards so that there is a minimum design data information required for every submission. And currently we are establishing a working group to investigate how further post-occupancy metrics can be incorporated as part of the entry requirements for the annual RII Architectural Awards and our medals. And where we continue to reflect, though, and where we look for guidance from the Architects' Council of Europe and our colleagues here today, is how we support this transition to design for performance, not compliance, in a manner that does not result in unfair additional unpaid workload and liability on our architectural profession. So I should say I've pulled these projects from a long list of 42 from the short list of this year's RI Awards. The awards will be announced on the 21st of June, and they're presented here today as examples of a diversity of approach from energy efficient retrofits to social sustainability. So the Tom Johnson House is an example of a deep retrofit refurbishment of its existing 6-story 1970s office development, the sort of scheme that we routinely see demolished now, certainly in Dublin. This scheme provides a new office headquarters for a government department. So the project transformed obstacles into opportunities. Because of the low ceiling heights, the existing suspended ceilings were removed, exposing the original waffle slab, which then, combined with automatically opening windows controlled by the building's building management system, allows the structure to be passively cooled through nighttime ventilation. The reduction in plant space at roof level due to the introduction of a new central atrium allowed for the inspired the moving away from fossil fuels and to external heat pumps with backup biofuel generator. And so the embodied carbon of the refurbishment at 287 kilos is 51% when the new build option is compared. And over 97% of the construction waste of the refurbishment works was separated and recycled. So the design consists of a full reorganization of the existing. The design consists of a full reorganization of the existing building, achieved through two major connecting elements: a central atrium and a new horizontal thoroughfare. Kinsale is a small town in medieval town in County Cork in the southwest of Ireland. This former grain store, built in 1840, is in an area what we would refer to as a zone of archaeological potential. So it was badly damaged in fire on a couple of occasions, and the building's original roof, apexes and internal floors were all lost before the building was acquired by the County Council, which has now transformed the structure into a public library and exhibition space. Nothing remained of the original floor plate, so this new structure, including floor decks, shelving and stairs, were all hung from the existing ring beam, which reduced excavations and the requirement for concrete underpinning. The material interventions are almost all timber, cross-laminated timber floor, glue-laminated timber panels and rafters and plywood sheeting, as well as all ceiling linings, with walls that are internally insulated with cork and externally finished with a shelter coat of lime render, which protects the building but allows the patterns and texture of the rubble walls to be expressed. This small town has a population of about 5,300, yet in the first 4 months since opening there were 52,700 visits. It's open to the local community 365 days a year through a My Open Library project, which allows unstaffed self-service visits to the library where you can borrow and return items, print, photocopy, use the internet or access Wi-Fi in the study space. So these are about 2 of the 42 projects now running for the RI Public Choice Award, with projects from house to housing, distilleries, laboratories, and all projects can be viewed on the RI website, and I invite you to visit and vote. Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent timing once again. Thank you, Droid, for that. And next, we have Ruta from Lithuania. Ruta's joining us online. So
Hello.
Ruta Leitinaite, hope I said that correctly,
Yeah.
is an architect, an architecture curator, a writer and a lecturer. She's board member of the Architects Association of Lithuania and also former executive board member of EUSEW. Is a coordinator of the Lithuanian State's project, Future School for Ukraine, coordinator of Creative Europe project, Euroheret, Architecture for Heritage in Ukraine, and Recreating Memory and Identity, and chair of the Task Force Solidarity with Ukraine at the Architects Council of Europe. She's also an expert in the expert subgroup Safeguarding Heritage in Ukraine for the European Commission, and initiator of the European Bauhaus Lab Public Infrastructure for Ukraine. Ruta, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andre. Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for this very extensive presentation. I will present a project not from Ukraine, but from Lithuania, and it will be quite different from what you saw because I will not come up with any data on energy efficiency or any construction details. I will talk more about the process. So the project is renovation of Rumpiškė residential area in Klaipėda, Lithuania. This project tackles a very important topic, not only in Lithuania, but also in Europe, which is affordable housing and renovation of the existing housing. As many post-Soviet countries, we have a lot of mass housing built after the World War II that has a huge potential to supply a quality living environment. And it can become the main source of affordable housing, but it has to be renovated as it is in really sad state today. We have governmental programs that are supporting renovation. However, as you may know, in some countries, including Lithuania, everything is private property. So if you want to come to a conclusion, you have to get an approval by all the inhabitants. And the programs that we have, they only support the insulation of the facades and renovation of infrastructure of the houses. The activity of inhabitants wanting to do the renovation is really low, and that's why, because after renovation, the architectural identity is lost. There is no added value for individual apartments nor to public spaces, and there is no communities enhancement. So we think that architecture has tools to implement energy sustainable technologies together with a design of spaces that would make an attractive, comfortable home for the end user. And we advocate for a holistic approach, which is not only energy efficiency and renovation of engineering systems, but way more. It's an urban integrity, improvement of private living space, improvement of outdoor and indoor public spaces, creating urban style, consistency of architectural image, building strong communities, equality and accessibility, building up culture of living together, sustainable way of life, sustainability and ecology of construction and exploitation, technological innovation, and adapting innovative legal and financial tools. The project of Rumpiškė is one of the kind because it happened almost accidentally. What happened? The municipality of Klaipėda decided that they wanted to create an urban vision for the whole district, and they announced a tender. This tender was won by a really great architectural studio, which was the luck number one, because when you have a tender with lowest price, you can imagine what kind of quality for the urban vision. But this was a very wise step by the municipality, first to make an urban vision, because if you want to get to a quality reconstruction or renovation, you have to start with urban scale. Then, secondly, when they had that vision, the municipality announced another tenders also by lowest price, and luckily they were also won by the same studio, Pupa from Lithuania, and these were tenders for the general public spaces in the area. So they designed Oak Park, Vaidila Square, and also the pond area. These areas were there designed originally in 1970s, but as you can imagine, they were derelict and not many things were happening there. And especially those places lacked infrastructure for children, teenagers, and elderly people. So what the architects did, of course, they did the aesthetic planning, a lot of dendrology solutions, but also they installed furniture, playgrounds, equipments, so that society could see and use those spaces daily. And these are the examples. Then going to the smaller scale, in the urban vision, the architects also embedded solutions and proposals for the courtyard spaces. The courtyard spaces are not property of the municipality, so it was not in the hands of municipality to implement those principles on how to make parking places, how to make those semi-private spaces where the community could gather, where children and elderly could gather. But once the projects were started by the communities themselves, the municipality took those guidelines and they gave them to the communities and to the builders and said, look, do it in this way. So they did. how it was done. Of course, the solutions for general public spaces and for the courtyards, they had to include participation of the inhabitants, and it was the hardest part of the project because the architects had to spend a lot of time. I think that they spent much more time on moderating, educating, and encouraging communities to discuss and come to a consensus than to a design itself. But then it ended with a luck because everybody was really satisfied with the final results. And then what happened? With public spaces, with general public spaces, with courtyards, people really felt that they were owning the place. And they felt really bad that they are still living in shabby houses. So the solution to make public spaces really concentrated communities. So they wrote the applications for the renovation of houses, because this is another program for the government, by the government, and house by house, all these districts started to be renovated. I have to say also that there is no possibility in Lithuania to renovate all the district. It has to be house by house because of the ownership. And somehow, in this case, the architects that were different for each house, they were looking at the context of Klaipėda, and they were choosing shapes and colors and materials. You can see red brick and also white, which is quite common to Klaipėda. So then you got to kind of a uniformous, but also individual image of architecture. So this process is not over. There are still houses that are not renovated. However, I would say that this project really highlights the methodology, that if you want to get somewhere, you have to lead by example, and there's no better way to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruta. And if there's anybody who leads by example, it's probably you. So the next speaker is Juan Antonio Ortiz Orhueta. He's the current vice president of the CSCAE, the chamber in Spain, the Architects Association in Spain, and he will be giving us a presentation of the award-winning projects in his country.
Thank you, Andre. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to present you a project in the city of Cáceres. Cáceres is a city World Heritage, and this is a project for a private contemporary art museum. I can see this project from the architect Emilio Tuñón, and won the category of New Bauhaus in our awards, in the CESCAE Awards in 2022. I think I can tell you that this is not only a building, this is an urban strategy, I think. In words of the architect, it's a strategy, not a form, because the project attempts to listen to the place and to imagine a possible city that, without renouncing our times, is capable of preserving the way the city breathes. It is therefore a question of finding the common territory between the contemporary and that which allows the city to recognize itself a figure, or rather a strategy that contains both sides. If we look at the plan, look at the map of the city, we can see this is a large square, a large a large block, which divides the ancient city that is here, more or less, without a new neighborhood from the 60s in 20th century. I think the museum means connection, because people now, before the museum, had to go rounding all this block to go from this neighborhood to the old city. The building connects two different situations. This old town up over and an uncharacteristic neighborhood, unconnected since decades. So the museum is presented as a sign of the city's identity, capable of generating a feeling of civic attachment to contemporary culture. You can see this sketch, this original sketch of the architect and the design who attends to the itinerary to connect these two neighborhoods. I think this project is not only a building, as I said before, because the idea of the project is always increasing the quality of the built environment in this area of the city. And it's really alienated with Davos Baukultur criteria. So here you can see the problem not only with these two neighborhoods separated by a large block, but also the problem of the highest street in the old town and the street in the neighborhood, the new neighborhood down. It's a lot of meters. There's a lot of meters between them. And in this plant, you can see the old house, this one. This is the new building that it's an extension from the first phase. And this other one is now built because here an old house will be converted in a store for the collection. And all of this space is the garden of the old house. So the project makes or become from an idea that a border could be a meeting point, and the proposal restores to the site the character of a land of transit and exchange that the areas outside the walls of the ancient city were making it permeable. The house, the upper street is where the entry of the museum is by an old house site on this street, Calle Pizarro. Under the pre-existing facade and through the back garden, a public route unfolds that is another link in the chain of squares and allows through which the old Cáceres is traversed and is the natural way of bridging the difference in level that leads to the new part of the city. In that way, we can say the city obtains a public artery that crosses the sphere of the private without touching it. Because and this you can walk beside the museum through the to connect this itinerary between the two streets. Another thing is that this itinerary makes accessibility route. It's necessary an elevator in one of the parts because of the large difference of the in between the streets, but it's an accessibility in itinerary in the city. Inside, this is the interior. The photo here is interior of the entrance from the old house in the upper street. And these are some interiors of the museum. I think you can transit beside the museum. You can enter the museum, but you also can walk as a pedestrian street between pieces of art, because this is the old house. This is the extension of the museum. In the garden, there are some pieces of contemporary art here or over there or here. And even there are events especially with children, with children's workshops or similar, that makes this space as another square in the city. So cultural and artistic values are joined in this museum, which supports the sustainability beauty of a medium city that is World Heritage since 1986. And so the Helga de Alvear Museum of Contemporary Art is a construction of the most important cultural and artistic meeting place in the city of Cáceres. The museum and the collection build a new space for citizens in which the material and immaterial values of contemporary culture can be understood through art as a collective expression. As well, the museum unfolds a new place of high spatial quality, both from an architectural and urbanistic point of view, which catalyzes the collective encounter between the citizens and the collection. The collection, in its natural exhibition and with its associated activities, seeks to respond to many of the cultural needs of human begins both from a personal, collective, and social point of view. The building and the garden intensify the complex quality of the urban landscape of this part of Cáceres by promoting circulation between the upper and lower districts of the city, making visitors and passers-by share routes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Juan Antonio. And our next speaker is Eva Alvarez from the beautiful city of Valencia. Eva is assistant professor at the Polytechnic of University of Valencia and works as an international consultant in sustainable development, particularly on gender balance. Eva.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. A moment. Sorry. Hope you can see my screen. Thank you very much, dear Judith and dear Andrea, for the invitation. It's really an honor for me being here today, and I'm going to talk a bit about a gender overview on architectural awards. This work has been done by Carlos Gomez and me. We have a small office too. We're teaching at the University Polytechnic of Valencia, and we are representing on behalf of ASA and CESCAE in Spain. And we also take part in the Archi project funded by EU that is addressed to study how we could promote or improve European ADCs, architectural design competitions, in creating a platform and studying this. This was the moment we introduced that in Valencia. We also had different meetings, the latest one in Budapest last week. This is a bigger consortium of 9 countries and 4 cooperation partners. We also introduced that project in the meeting in Valencia of the ACE Awards working group that we have seen today. Many of the persons here today were there also in Valencia. You are welcome whenever you want to come to Valencia, of course. And the point we want to reflect today is that, let me know to have one moment. this is any award comes from a work that has been done by a procurement, public or private, and sometimes we have a competition, public or private. So if we are reflecting on the IKEA project, on the conditions of competition, they should be matched or addressed also to the conditions of procurement, even more public procurement, the conditions of work, and of course, the conditions of the awards. They are heavily related, and that's what I want to highlight today here. In doing so, we are conducting, it's going to be launched in a few months, and a survey that has to be related with the age sector study survey too, that they were very kind to have some meetings with us in order to interlink both surveys. And I wanted also to show you that according to this previous survey, not next one, 2022, we see this is the situation right now, or it was in 2022 in Europe, that we have, well, a lot of architects, is still male-dominated profession. And when we come to practices, they have, we can talk about the number of practices, around 150,000 practices in Europe. And regarding the competitions, a very few part of the architects go through competitions. If we see that, it is surprising that from these 150,000 practices in Europe, more or less, depending on the year, the majority of them are one-person practice, and some of them are two-person practice. If we see here the numbers, we can see that 62% of practices in Europe are a single person. We can arrive to the 75% with two persons, and the majority, only 10%, are from a medium-sized big office. And only 13% of the practices are applying for competitions. That is a very small part. We see that Germany, Swiss, and Austria are the leading countries offering ADCs per year, that are quite a lot. And we are asking what type of firms are obtaining these commissions. And we can see also that way that we are architects, women and men architects in Europe, only Croatia is leading with more women than men architects, but Germany and Spain and many other countries have a great quantity of women architects. So the other question is, who is obtaining commissions? We have a gender equality strategy in UA, and we have had some projects funded by EU also, like Yes We Plan, that try to promote women architects and civil engineers in Europe. And from this study, we also kept seeing that the majority of women architects and men architects work in offices at only one person or at least 5 persons. The majority of them, their profession works in small offices. So why gender diversity or diversity is important related to these topics? Because many persons on the margins or not on the focus have taught many things that were important for architecture. Many persons have observed other ways of doing or different way of living. Of course, CIVA Museo, they are working in Barcelona. We have seen some of the effects today. It's impressive, and they have a position to show that is related to the mitigation of all the climate change effects that are quite dangerous and important today. It's important, this care. Also, it's a question of market and a question of business, but this is not the main point. So coming again to this relation between awards and competition, okay, 5 minutes. We see that the Yes We Plan proposed different solutions of questions that were related to the networks, related to the reference requirements to access the small and medium-sized offices to public procurement, and the way we try equality in the invitations for architectural design competitions, and of course, juries that we have said today, many of the awards have had the award because of the juries, or if we have a statistic to evaluate how gender influences in public procurement and ADCs, and of course, emphasize the benefits of gender equal approaches to all our work. Many of these awards have been gone forward like this Austrian Award for Women in Architecture, the French one, the work of the RIBA in the UK, or of course the new European House talking about togetherness, sustainability, and Baukultur. Of course, the Mies Awards too, and some reflections to finish. We are talking about that the awarded proposal becomes a reference, so it's important that we confirm juries and brief and these opportunities. Many of the work completed through public procurement with or without ADCs is often recognized with the awards, so there is a relationship. We are talking about gender, and we should analyze that through gender lenses. We are talking about working conditions for all architects because majority of the projects are accessed through a kind of public procurement or ADC. And of course, we are talking about an impact on our common environment. Of course, it's very welcome to align with all these objectives. So that's all. Sorry for taking more time. Thank you.
So thank you very much. We're late now by 20 minutes, so we'll be closing the seminar here. I'd just like to say one closing remark about the link between the Epbd and the reason why a lot of the projects that have been presented are award-winning projects, and the link between the two. The Executive Board of the Architects Council of Europe has set up a peer learning group on the organization of awards, chaired by Judith. And one of the objectives is to introduce sustainability criteria for the awards of the national awards across our member organizations. The intent is to, rather than look at the Epbd as a regulatory framework, the intent is to provide an incentive for architects to strive towards a sustainability. So it's intended as a pull factor, rather than just having to design buildings with energy performance, so to speak, as a burden or as an obligation. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for attending this seminar. It will be accessible online on YouTube for those of you who would like to review the whole seminar again, and hopefully we'll have you with us again at future seminars like this. Thank you very much.